Hey guys, welcome back to On The Shelf. So, here we are, the last video for 2019, and yes, I realize it's in 2020, kiss my ass. Before we get into that, I just want to say thank you guys once again for everything that you guys have done this year, for all the videos you shared, for the likes, for the comments, for all the views. I appreciate every single one of you, and I can't wait to continue giving you guys more stuff going forward. Hopefully, I should be making a video soon talking about my plans and the games I plan on reviewing. Let's get into it. So this final list, if you haven't discerned from the title, I don't know why I'm pretending like this is something that's going to be a ginormous surprise, but so this will be my top 10 games of the decade. Now with this list, I didn't choose just 10 random games. I chose the best games of each year, broke that list down, and then said, okay, where does that game rank on a top 10 list? That's how I chose it for myself. So, let's go ahead and talk about it. I'm excited for this list. I've been waiting for this list. I've been working on it since like middle of November. So let's talk about these games. It's the year 2014, and the game of the year for that year for me was Dragon Age Inquisition. Now, as I've said in other videos before, and I've talked about and I've told a lot of people, I really enjoy Dragon Age Inquisition. My biggest beef with Dragon Age Inquisition actually isn't even with the game. I had a really bad breakup the day of the game being released, and it has always haunted me with that game. And it's sad, it's been now over 5 years since that game released, and though I've played through it and I've gotten most of the way done with it, there's some things I haven't finished up with it, and DLC that I haven't even completely wrapped up with, only because that game haunts me because of what happened. And it's sad because the game deserves it. The game was really good. Other games that actually came out the year include Wolfenstein: The New Order, Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor, Alien Isolation, and of course, the one that didn't get nearly as much praise as it should have been, Divinity: Original Sin. These were all fantastic games, and while I didn't get to play Divinity: Original Sin until years later when it got released on the Xbox One, most of those games were fantastic games. And 2014, even though it was the year of letdown when it came to certain exclusives, there were some games that did still shine. This, I felt like, was the one that just shined just a little bit more. I think Divinity: Original Sin probably could have been brought up on that list. I don't feel like that's fair to Dragon Age Inquisition since I played way more of it than I got to of Divinity: Original Sin. Either way, I feel like there wasn't much of a loser in that regard, so here we are. So number 9 gives us the year 2017, and that was actually the year that I finally started doing reviews. And I started doing them, writing them on my blog, which I always link in every video below. So if you ever wanted to check it out, if you ever guys want to read some of the stuff that I have written, it's down there. You guys can always check it out. I do want to get back into writing on that again. My laptop's been at the old house, though, when it comes to like uploading videos and stuff. So I haven't had any opportunity in a while to be able to make anything new. I'm hoping to change that with this year. That year was the first year for me doing my best and worst lists. And with my best list, my number 1 game was Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus. Now, there are people who are going to argue with me. Argue about this game, talking about how it's not that good, it's bad, blah 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 blah. I loved this game. I did. I'm sorry. I loved it. You can kiss my ass if you didn't. It's perfectly fine. If you don't like it, that's fine. But the game had a very personal story, and it was really great. There were a lot of things that were step ups from the first one. Now, obviously, there were a couple things that were a step down from the first one. The over-the-top story doesn't bother me. Like, some people want to make it be like, whoa, over-the-top story. Dude, you're talking about a game series that had Mecha Hitler in it. Kiss my ass with the over-the-top shit. Of course it's over-the-top. Are you kidding me right now? Really? I love Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus. But The New Colossus had a lot of competition in it, and it barely beat them out. Now, I didn't get to play Divinity: Original Sin 2 until a year or so afterwards, sadly. So that one didn't get reviewed by me, so that's why I'm sticking firm with the game that I actually reviewed. However, I'll admit that I think that Divinity: Original Sin 2 might be actually better than Wolfenstein 2. So if I had to redo that list, Wolfenstein 2 might have been number 2, and Original Sin 2 might have been number 1. But for now, Once again, not to complicate things, other games that came out in 2017 included Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, which was a fantastic game and actually one of the games I had higher up on the list. Excited for number 2, by the way. Cannot wait. Legend of Zelda: The Breath of the Wild. Now, this is a game I didn't get to play. I still haven't played it to this day. I don't have a Switch. I can't play this game. I don't know. Now, I've heard a lot of great things about it. I heard some poor things about it. So I guess it's really about what your preference is. If you're Jim Sterling, we'll give it a 7 out of 10. I don't care personally. It's everyone's preference. I don't care if you give it a 7 out of 10, a 2 out of 10, a 10 out of 10. Well, okay, not entirely. I've talked about that in the past, about being objective versus subjective. Game reviews should be like 80% objective and 20% subjective. Whenever it comes to reviews, whether an objective review should have it say, okay, it's this score, and then subjectivity moves it a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right. And it's usually by like a point, 2 at the most. So I guess I couldn't see it being a 2 out of 10, but come on, people. People are still crucifying the poor man over a 7 out of 10. Horizon Zero Dawn was a fantastic game for the PlayStation 4, as it finally started to get its stride with Bloodborne and Uncharted 4, A Thief's End. So Horizon was able to kind of bring that forward. Now, rumors are that it's supposed to be going to the PC. That's big. Cuphead, one of the few Xbox One titles that was actually really freaking good. And I'm still waiting for the DLC on that one too, by the way. And of course, Divinity Original Sin 2. 2017 had a really strong year for competition. But the reason why it's number 9 is just because obviously some of the faults that the game had that prevented it from being like that top tier, like gold standard of its genre type game. Now, when I give 10 out of 10s, it's not because they're flawless. I don't give 10 out of 10s because I think they're perfect games. I give 10 out of 10s because I feel like they should be the gold standard that other games should kind of like learn lessons of and continue to evolve off of. Not start from scratch and give us stuff that came out 20 years prior. So games like The Witcher 3 or The Last of Us or Divinity Original Sin 2 are all gold standards of the genres that they represent. And while this had a personal story, I felt like there were still a couple more games that got a few more things right moving forward.
Tonight, we burn.
And one of those games moving forward was 2012's Dishonored. Now, Dishonored was a game that came out of nowheresville. The unique art style, the great gameplay. Honestly, Dishonored had just about it all. Dishonored was a fantastic game, and I absolutely love this game. There were a couple of small faults here and there with it, but for the most part, it stood really fucking strong. And came out of nowhere. It fought off things like Far Cry 3, it fought off things like Halo 4, it fought off things like Call of Duty Black Ops 2, other games too, like The Walking Dead, the Telltale series, the thing that really launched Telltale as the company itself before obviously all the shit that went down last year, and of course the one and only Mass Effect 3. Now, to pull off all those games, for me to be able to say, yeah, that was the best game of the year, is huge. And it put Arcane on the map, and they gave us fantastic titles like Prey, gave themselves a sister studio that wound up giving us Dishonored 2, and I'm excited to see whatever they have coming next. Well, I'd really like to see them come up with another Dishonored game, but that's neither here nor there. Now, 2016. That was a year now, wasn't it, baby? 2016 gave us Titanfall 2. It gave us the title, for me personally, of the year was Titanfall 2. Now, there were a lot of great titles in 2016. I feel like 2016 was really underrated overall. It was a strong year. Overwatch, Doom, and of course Titanfall 2, Battlefield 1, all set first-person shooters back on the map and showed us that they could still be great titles. It had been 4 years since we got a really great first-person title, and I'm sorry, it has been. People who will sit there and say Battlefield 4 was really good are lying to themselves. I like Battlefield 4, I had fun with Battlefield 4, but even to this day, it's still extremely buggy. Battlefield 1 reminded us that DICE still fucking has it, okay? And then, Overwatch was a great game. The reason why I don't play Overwatch anymore is because it's stagnant. They haven't really evolved enough. And now I'm hearing that they've made some changes here and there, and they've done some good things, but it wasn't until like 6 months plus after I stopped playing that they finally put these changes in. It's been 3 years. But when it came out, me and my boys put a lot of hours into it and played it a lot. And it's probably because of that. That's why I'm so burnt out on it, honestly. And it's sad because the characters and the art style, everything was fantastic. But the game that went ahead and really showed above it all was Titanfall 2 for me. It was a great story that maybe was just a little bit short, which really stems from its really, in my eyes, a 9 out of 10 that I gave it. But the multiplayer and all the other stuff that was added on was really great. They didn't overdo it with the monetization, and they showed that EA can put out, well, I shouldn't say put out, support a product that gives us really great stuff. And if it wasn't because EA shoved Titanfall 2 in the worst hole ever, with it being between a Call of Duty game, which wasn't even all that great, and Battlefield 1, which was really, really good, that maybe it would have had more life. It was a title that outshowed its competition. And it was a year or two that still had other games too that I didn't even mention, like Dark Souls 3 and Dishonored 2. Dishonored 2 also came out that year too. So there were some fantastic games that came out that year. But to me, like I said, Titanfall 2 takes the cake. 2018. Now, obviously, the year is now freshly 2020, but I'm going to still refer to it as last year was a really great year. I have my reviews down below that if you want to see me talk about some of these other games that I'm going to mention. But the year of 2018 was taken, for me, by God of War. That was my number one game. And now people are going to sit there and say, no, that deserves to be the game of the decade. But to me, it doesn't. Now, it's a fantastic game, and it's extremely memeable, obviously. I mean, who can remember the boy in every single meme that people had for like 6 months after the game came out? The game put God of War back on the map. It was a great title for Sony to put out there. And I mean, obviously Sony hasn't really missed all that much in the last, 4 or 5 years now. They've, ever since 2015 with Bloodborne coming out, they've put out great title after great title. Now, obviously, they still put out a couple stinkers here and there, but luckily the titles that they get right completely outshow the titles that they get it wrong. Now, I mean, maybe one day I'll make a video talking about the titles that they get wrong, but let's focus back up and talk about how God of War was so great. Like I said, you can see some of the things that I had to say down below with my best of list of 2018 when I talked about it. I didn't get to review it right away because I didn't get to beat it. In 2018, at that time, I was still working at my old job, and I was working like 60 hours a week. I was exhausted. I didn't have enough time to do reviews, and I wasn't doing video reviews, so I never got a chance to review it, sadly. So, I wish I would have gotten a chance to, but like I said, I talked about a lot of the good points down below, but some of the points that kind of held it back for me from being like game of the decade or even a 10 out of 10. For me, it's 9 out of 10. Stemmed from the fact that there was a lot of the same, I won't say fetch quests, but really the same kind of like structure of mission design. As in, like, you get a little bit further in your main quest. There's one giant main quest. And you move a little bit further only to find out, oh, there's something blocked on my path. Now I need to go here to go ahead and unblock it. Okay, well now I unblock this. I go forward. Oh, there's something else blocking my path. Up, and maybe the first few times it's not so bad, but when it's a repetitive structure of the main game, it's frustrating. But other things like the great characters that were brought in, obviously giving new life to Kratos and not just making him this angry god of war, but somebody who is horrified by the actions that he's made and he's done, and giving him more humanity to go with the fact that he's obviously some giant Spartan god. And then obviously to give him a sidekick of sorts that they easily could have whiffed on, but luckily they didn't. Santa Monica went ahead and nailed it with his son being, like a integral character and a sidekick to boot to help you on your quest. And there's just so many things that they got right with this game. And like I said, there are people that might argue with me about where it is on the list, but for me, while I really enjoy the game and I think it's an amazing game, It's absolutely gorgeous, by the way. If you ever played on a PlayStation 4 with a 4K TV, my God, the game is brilliant. But it does have a few faults here and there that I'm hoping that maybe further on, if they do make another God of War game, if they're working on one right now, they'll fix, they'll continue to evolve. But this is easily the best God of War game we've ever gotten, period. Other games that came out in 2018 consist of Yakuza 6 Song of Life, which was Kiryu's farewell tour, and it was a fantastic game, beautiful game, so rich, and I love that game so much. Another great Sony game. Red Dead Redemption 2, which was the close second of that year. God of War just barely beat it out with its slightly more personal story, but Arthur Morgan is a fantastic character, and I absolutely love that game. Monster Hunter World and Dragon Ball FighterZ, both games that came out very early in the year, wound up being fantastic games. And they're still fantastic games. They're still getting new stuff, new content. Monster Hunter just got Iceborne, and there's rumors and there's buzz that there might be a Season 3 pass for Dragon Ball FighterZ, which it desperately needs. There's so many characters that were left out personally, but that's just my vibe on that. And of course, another PlayStation 4 exclusive, Shadow of Colossus remake is, I mean, they redid it in such a great way, and it didn't get enough attention and love that it deserved. So number 5 is the year 2013. Now this was the weakest year for me, personally. 2013 was the year we got a brand new console generation, and we're moving on from 360 and PlayStation 3, which were both fantastic for the most part. While PlayStation 3 didn't have as many great exclusives as it should have had, Xbox 360 just knocked that out of the park with its Gears of War series, Halo being obviously top tier, with 3 and with Reach. I mean, the 360 was brilliant. Dead Rising at the time, I mean, obviously now it's on the PlayStation 4 as well, but back then when it was just on the 360. And of course, Left 4 Dead. There was just so many great games. So with 2013, everyone was excited for the new console generation. And while there were some great games in 2013, 2013 really missed with a lot of their games. However, with 2013, the game of the year for me was The Last of Us. We're getting into the games that were like 10 out of 10 legendary status for me. These are the games that defined their genres. And The Last of Us absolutely still does to this point. And the only reason why, for me, The Last of Us is not more of the game of the decade isn't because of the storytelling or the characters or the voice acting. None of that. That's obviously on point. These are the strongest points of this game. Now, the reason why certain games might not quite hit up on my list is because something is holding it back from absolute greatness. Whether it is the storytelling or it is, gameplay. And for here, it is the gameplay. The gameplay was a little stagnant. And I'm excited for Last of Us 2 because it looks like they're really reinvigorating it and adding new nuances and new things to it to really feel fresh. With Last of Us, it felt like that Uncharted gameplay with a different scenario, and it didn't feel evolved enough. It felt like they were focusing more on the storytelling and the characters, which is fine. Don't get me wrong. That's why it's a memorable game still to me, and it still belongs as a gold standard for its genre. But the gameplay was lacking compared to. And I've played back through that like 3 more times recently since we started getting more news and videos of The Last of Us 2. So it's fresh in my mind, and so for me, it definitely isn't the top game, but it definitely belongs high up on the list, and it is at number 5 here. So other games that came out in 2013 that were really good are games like BioShock Infinite, which was a brilliant game and probably a close second for me. Very much so like God of War versus Red Dead Redemption 2 in 2018. These games were neck and neck. Either one, in my eyes, would be considered the best, and I wouldn't argue one bit with you. The first Justice that we got from NetherRealm Studios, which was obviously still, I guess you could consider violent, but really just not nearly as brutal as Mortal Kombat, but gave us a new and fun twist on like these DC heroes and a great storyline, and it wound up being a really great game. We also got Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag was probably my favorite, has been and probably always will be at this point with the Assassin's Creed game. The naval combat was amazing. The The characters and the story were really well done, and honestly, I feel like that was the peak. That was as high up as Ubisoft could ever take that franchise, and ever since then, it has been sadly downhill. It does make me sad because 4 was so good and put everything in the right direction, and ever since then they've kind of squandered that. I mean, come on, you were not only an assassin, you were a fucking pirate. Shit was great, and I do genuinely miss that game a lot. I mean, I do own it. I guess I can go play it, but you know what I mean. We also got Tomb Raider, and of course we got the legendary, game that sold, I think, the most copies or made the most money, or I don't know, both. I'm probably. And Grand Theft Auto 5. Now, Grand Theft Auto 5 was still a top game for me, but obviously the thing that's made it so the high-selling game and made the most money and all the other shit was really because it's online play. The main story was pretty good, and the characters were really well done, but let's face it, the thing that's kept it alive 6 years later is strictly the online stuff. For me, yeah, The Last of Us takes the cake, and I think it was a really well done game, and to the point where, I'm excited to see with this new decade the launch of The Last of Us 2, and to see if that, by the end of this next decade, is one of the top spaces of Game of the Decade. We'll see. Boy, here we go. These choices start getting harder and harder. These were hard. Really, they were. They were really hard for me to really think long about and be like, okay, which one belongs where? But at number 4, we're going to put Skyrim. Yes, Skyrim. I know, don't get mad at me for making this choice, but honestly, Skyrim is one of those games where for a very long time it was the gold standard for RPGs. But other games that I feel like have taken its place consist of Divinity Original Sin 2, The Outer Worlds, and then, of course, The Witcher 3, The Wild Hunt. Games that have shown that they've taken the formula, the things that Skyrim did really, really well, like giving us organic storytelling and great story missions and great... The overall story in Skyrim is weak, and that's kind of the reason why it's number 4 for me. The main story is weak. However, it's the side quests, it's the natural things, as you're just exploring the world, random things will run up to you, whether it's people or even talking dogs. Hey, I got a quest for you, and you want to come follow me? Hell yeah, doggy. Let's fucking go see what you got. Oh shit, you got a legendary mace? Cool, boy. You can knock someone over the head and steal its soul and put it into a soul gem. Now I can use that soul gem to empower other items. So on and so forth, okay? Skyrim did things and evolved things in a way that made it where RPGs were fucking cool again. And that's not to say they weren't cool before, so before anybody gets mad at me, it's just one of those things where it wasn't a genre that appealed to me. And I'm sure there's plenty of other people, but Skyrim made them popular and made them cool and got a lot of people who weren't into them before into them. And I've explored newer RPGs since. Well, I should say newer as well as older ones since is what I mean to say. I've checked out older ones that I didn't even give a chance to. And I feel bad that I didn't. And Skyrim also helped breathe life into not just the genre, but also helped bring forth a lot of new games in a similar mold. So absolutely it belongs fairly high on this list. But like I said, because of the overarching story being weak, really, that's what held it back from being the first, second, or third place. Number 3. I wouldn't be surprised with 2020 coming around. We'll see. We will see. We've got 10 years to figure it out. We'll see. But I wouldn't be surprised if maybe, at the end of the decade, if I'm still doing this. We'll see on that too. Some of the games, if the game that wins Game of the Year for me in 2020 is one of these top 3 spots, like 2010's game was. And that's what as a number 3, 2010. And that game is Mass Effect 2. I played this game a little late, honestly. I played it probably toward the end of 2011. And I know I'm wrong for that. I am. I had a really good friend of mine named Dark Zero go ahead and recommend the game for me. And I was like, alright, fine, I'll check it out. It's like $20 with all the DLC at Walmart. And I picked it up and I fell in love with the game. So much so that I wish that I had checked it out sooner. It was hard to find an original copy of Mass Effect for the 360. I eventually did, but now I don't even have it anymore. I wound up trading it in. And I wound up falling in love with the characters and the writing, and it was Bioware at its best, baby. I mean, you can sit there and say that maybe Mass Effect is better, or that Mass Effect 3 is better, and I mean, I feel like you can't be wrong, really, on any of those games. Even though 3 had a weak ending, and it made a lot of us mad, 95% of Mass Effect 3 was fucking brilliant. And I feel like people forget that. You can say that with all the games. You know, I can understand people liking the deeper RPG elements of the original one. Or for me, the focus on the story and, you know, the characters and whatnot in the second one. And kind of streamlining and mainlining some more of the RPG elements for me to get into it. Because sometimes with me, I'm not super hardcore in RPGs. I'm not. As I just talked about with the previous game. I'm not. But it helped. This game, as well as Skyrim, helped really kind of get me into wanting to know more and to play more RPGs, because I started to realize how much I really liked them. And this was, like I said, this was BioWare when it was hitting on all cylinders, baby. Dragon Age, the original Dragon Age had hit, I think, the year before. And then they dropped this bad boy, this hot track right here. And yeah, it absolutely is a 10 out of 10, and it beat out some really tough games in 2010 too, to take that spot. The original Red Dead Redemption, nonetheless. Who would have thought? The original Red Dead Redemption would probably be second place, and it's sad because that's the second time now that Red Dead Redemption has eaten the L and taken the second place trophy. Red Dead Redemption, obviously, to me, definitely was an amazing game that really, I mean, that game obviously wasn't the only game, but really helped put Rockstar on the map. I mean, obviously, you know, you had the Grand Theft Auto games, but everyone always kind of just shrugged off the Grand Theft Auto games because they felt like they were too much potty humor. But Red Dead Redemption, that got everybody's attention because it showed not only how great the writing could be, but just how good Rockstar could really, really fucking be. It shows just how good BioWare used to be, though, too. They beat that out. Fallout New Vegas by Obsidian was a great game, but obviously was marred by a lot of issues, technical issues that weren't really all Obsidian's fault. That was really on Bethesda for trying to rush them on that. StarCraft 2 was also out as well, if I do remember straight. I can't believe it's been 10 years since StarCraft 2 came out. Holy shit on that one. Back when Blizzard was still top tier, man. And they put out really, really great games. StarCraft 2 was a fantastic game. We also had, I think God of War 3 came out too. Alan Wake. And of course, how could I forget, Halo Reach. Bungie's send-off before they went to go work on Destiny and go try to be their own group. Man, oh man, there were some great titles in 2010, and it's shocking for me. Now, granted, I'm the one doing the list, but it's crazy to think about the games that they had to compete with for me to be like, no, that's still number one. So, good job on BioWare. I want that BioWare back.
No one wants to admit it, but humanity is under attack. One very specific man might be all that stands between humanity and the greatest threat of our brief existence.
Number 2 and number 1 were really hard, because these games for me are pretty much as perfect as they can get. Now, that's not, like I said before, it's not excluding bugs and stuff like that. That's me talking about like the story, the characters, everything involved. And so for me, this was really, really tough. But for me, number 2 was 2019, and of course, the game of the year for that I just revealed here, and that is Metro Exodus. Now, I've said what I said in both my review and the top 10 list. So if you want, you can check those out. I'll probably link them down below so that way you can find them. But I love that game so much, and it had some stiff competition. There were some great games. There were 3 10 out of 10s in 2019. Okay, 3. I'm hoping there's even more this year. Gold standards in games that show that they are the best that gaming can be. That they can be even better entertainment than, you know, TV shows or movies. Hands down. And these 3 games did it. Games like Resident Evil Remake, games like The Outer Worlds, which, like I said before, easily could be number 1. Metro Exodus or The Outer Worlds to me can be anyone's number 1. And I would not disagree with them at all. Other games, obviously, include any of the games that I have chosen on my top 10 list, as well as any of the games that I said prior to talking about the list that I didn't get to play, but I know a lot of people hold in high regards, like Luigi's Mansion 3, Fire Emblem, Death Stranding, stuff like that. There were some fantastic games in 2019, and to have Metro Exodus beat it out says a lot about 4-8 games and the evolution of the studio. Comparing Metro 2033 all the way to Metro Exodus, huge leaps. And honestly, they've been making the games now this entire decade. It's crazy to think about how Metro 2033, if I remember correctly, came out in 2010. And then the second one came out in 2013. So for this last decade, 4A Games has been putting out gold in my eyes. And to me, Metro Exodus is not only a gold standard in its genre, the survival horror, type of genre that it strives from, but shows you what a studio can do when you give them the resources and the time to put out something. Metro Exodus is fucking brilliant, and it definitely belongs on number 2. Like I said, it was hard, but of course, if you've been paying attention, the number 1 year for me was, and of course that year was 2015. And what came out in 2015? None other than The Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt. Now, CD Projekt Red has done a fantastic job putting out quality stuff over the years now. And they're continuing to get better and better and better. Now, obviously, there are always some issues. Like, there's been issues been talked about with the studio and about how management has been doing what it needs to do so that way they can make the games. They've got so much talent at the studio that they should be making these games, I won't say quicker, but more efficiently. I don't know if, the upper management and some of the owners have taken that to heart. I think that they have. They've been out in the spotlight and taking a lot of criticism. But this still doesn't change the fact that they've put out an amazing game, a gold standard. A game that I feel like might only be upset by its own game, which is Cyberpunk 2077 coming out in September now this year. I'm super excited still, even though they pushed it back. I want them to get it right more than anything. I don't want them to sit there and rush out the title only for it to be a buggy mess, to be remembered for being a travesty rather than being an amazing product like it could have been. It's sad that we gotta wait a few more months now, going from, I think it was April 20th now to September 17th, I think it was. But Wild Hunt is an amazing game, and so much so that it gave people new life into wanting to check out the books, and of course finally gave us the TV series based on the books. I don't think either of those things would happen if The Wild Hunt did not come out, and if CD Projekt Red didn't put as much love and attention into that as they did. The characters are amazing. The story is fucking amazing. It's amazing. It's like a Game of Thrones story in a video game. It's still brilliant. The side quests are fucking brilliant. The hunts for all these mythical creatures is amazing. And just everything about it is so fucking good. It's all on point. The storytelling, the characters, the voice acting, the story, the main story itself, the side quest, the gameplay. Everything is on point with this game. And it deserves every bit of praise that it has ever gotten and will continue to get. It is a gold standard in RPGs, period. And because of that, I feel like games like The Outer Worlds and games like Metro Exodus even have all benefited from that game being released, because it's not even so much that they study that game entirely, but they could see, the things that it did right and maybe a couple of things it did wrong that made it where people fell in love with the game that they did. Because you see so many other influences go into that game, into those games I should say. Whether it's, like I said, the organic feeling of being able to run into, new missions and new characters. You'll miss entire things. You could miss entire storylines if you don't go in a particular direction, you don't find a particular character. And this is all without mentioning the DLC that came afterwards. The DLC that you paid $25 for, and the DLC combined probably would have been worthy of an entire brand new game. They did such a great job showcasing all their talents, and they deserve all the praise in the world. And it's definitely the number 1 game of the decade. It definitely belongs there, and I definitely believe in it. So that's it for me, guys. this list was really hard, and I'm sure I'll get some comments and some feedback, but instead of just telling me how wrong I am, tell me what you would have done instead, where you would have placed things, and why. And I hope to see some comments. I hope to hear, read some messages, haha. Hope to read some messages from you guys, and I hope you guys keep it real, and I'm excited for this next decade in gaming, and I'm excited for new consoles, and I can't wait to talk about all that stuff with you guys, alright? So until then, I will see you guys next on the shelf. Bye, guys.